Hello and welcome to the Lawful Remedy with the Clever Clogs. I'm Richard Vobes, and with me to help me through this is
Karen Dodd.
Hello, Karen.
Hello, Richard.
We are in my little studio here, ready to go live with you. We haven't done this before, so expect all sorts of errors and complications. But we are very much looking forward to it. I think I'm glowing red already with the
excitement.
anticipation
Absolutely.
of it. I don't know why. Karen is here to go through the chat, and she is here so that she can sort out all the questions that you might have for our wonderful panellists. Now, talking of the panellists, shall we go to Karen and find out who they are?
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Richard. So this evening on our panel, we have three wonderful guys, and we have Sukh Singh, who has been at the forefront of this new paradigm, I guess, this transition that we're going through. And then we have Dean of Buxton.
If Dean says something, he'll come up on the screen.
Yeah, Dean, I think.
How
are you there, Dean?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go,
he is.
Dean. Thank you. So Dean's sort of in his car because you're pretty off-grid and you don't always get Wi-Fi, do you? So you've gone to your car and hopefully we'll have a good connection through the evening. And then we also have Pete the Hat in Kent. Where's Pete? Does Pete need to say anything?
Only if you want me on the screen, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
So that people can see you. So these are our lovely three gents for this evening. And if this is a success, which I'm sure it will be, it might be. It'll be fun if nothing else. Then we're going to continue this for the next following 3 weeks to try and help people. So I think we're going to start off, are we not, with Sukh Singh. I'm sorry, Sukh. I'm only used to calling him Sukh.
I thought you were asking me to sing.
Oh, you can sing. Come on, sing. Start us off with a song. Sukh's going to sing a song.
You wanted it to be a successful show, so we'll avoid that.
Okay, we'll avoid this.
So
yeah.
what do we ask? We can talk about how people might answer the questions, because I think what we've just talking before we started is that there are different approaches to. Oh, hello. We've just started our own feedback. I think that's on your screen. Anyway, never mind that.
That's
I told
really...
you. It's coming out your loudspeaker. So there might be a delay here anyway, don't worry about that.
I've muted it.
Brilliant. So over to you, Sukh. How are you going to answer some of the questions that we are getting in?
Good evening, Richard. Everybody, hope you're well. So, I mean, from my perspective, this is around sovereignty and the law. So the first thing we have to do is understand sovereignty and the law and what they are as a concept from the creator and whatever creative force people believe put us here, whether that's nature or God or the force from Star Wars. It doesn't really matter at this point what that is to you. There is an infinite creative force that has ultimately put us here, and through that we're granted a conscience, and that is ultimately our guide to having free will. And our free will is determined into two parts. We control our internal drivers, the intent that we have, and we control the external drivers, which is the consent that we give. And these are the two levers essentially to our conscience, those things we choose to do and those things we choose to have done to us or we choose to participate in. And the law is really supposed to be around the conscience. It's not supposed to be around a static rule set. It's supposed to be us operating as almost co-creators to whatever infinite energy or God or nature or whatever you believe put us here. And it's how we start to express and manifest that in this material world. So walking around the streets, talking to each other, buying stuff, trading, whatever it is, we have to operate from our conscience. And the law is there really is something as man starts to express themselves. The unwritten rule set is natural law. For me, it's the highest. Some people call it divine law, universal law. And then over time, people have started to write that down into different ancient scripts, the Torah, the Quran, the Gospels, the British Constitution. And in England, that in written format gets known as a common law. And that is ultimately the law of the land. So when I'm looking at answering these questions, that's the sort of wider context that I believe that myself and the others on the panel, and they'll obviously give you their viewpoint. It's not so much the approach you're using, but the energy which you bring, understanding that there is no authority between you and the creator, that you are sovereign. There's no DVLA or policeman or prime minister. There's you and your conscience, and then the infinite creation. And so that's the power that you have to be able to try and embrace. And that's what most people that are struggling with that. We've been so conditioned into answering our names to registers and letters that come through the door. We've almost come subservient in our obedience to it. And so people are struggling with breaking that connection a little bit, although it's becoming easier as the government and establishment start to show their incompetency, possible deliberate incompetency, and the pain that they're inflicting. But I'll sort of be looking at it from that perspective, and then from there getting into the technical aspects. But for me, the spirit that you carry and the energy is the most important part of it. Brilliant. And that's what the law ultimately is, how we manifest that in the way we live.
Thank you so much. Does any of the other panelists want to talk about how they will approach some of the questions? We're getting questions coming in. And just on that, just whilst we're talking about that, I've noticed some people are putting in capital letters, and I know capital letters is a thing, but it gets our attention. If you put the word question and then your question, that would be very helpful. I'm pressing all the wrong buttons here. Look at this.
Doing all right, Richard.
I'm doing all right. I'm having to be in the gallery as well as sort of try and be coherent here. So if you write in capital letters your question and then put your question, it helps Karen, who is dutifully here scanning through to get the questions out as well as you doing all your chat. So go back to the other question then, was who would like to... what about Pete the Hat? How are you going to answer the questions?
Very, very much in the same way. Suk and I are pretty much on the same page with regard to, it's an inside job, you see. It's not about what's out there, it's about what's in here. So the first thing you have to get rid of is fear, because all of the external things that are happening to you that you feel we have to comply with generally happen because you're in fear of something else happening as a consequence of you not taking action. So you take the action that you feel you have to take in order to avert anything that's you're being threatened with. Whereas if you are conscious, if you like, on the inside, that if you're doing no harm, then no harm will come to you. Then you don't have to be in fear. And so it's about knowing where you stand as an entity, if you will, in your own consciousness, and trusting to something greater than yourself, no matter what you call that. Infinite intelligence, God, the divine. My own experiences of having that operate within my life and recognizing it, and there are many others who have done so. And once you've done that and you know that it exists as something that can occur, then the fear goes away, because what you give is what you get, very literally. So you may have all the particular ways of addressing issues through notice, through different pieces of paper, shall we say. But if you don't know in yourself that you're sovereign, that you don't have to comply, that what you're doing is causing no harm, and therefore you're not committing any kind of offence against anybody or anything, then you're probably going to be unsuccessful, because as soon as you find yourself being challenged, you won't have that base to work from where you know that you're safe, and that you know your job is to work with the Creator and nothing else.
Right. Okay. What about you, Dean?
Yeah, hi everybody. Well, I see it as though I'm a simple man, and I try to simplify things to the most simplest level. For everybody else, it's basically, so I would try and answer questions as simply as possible, and that's about it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Nice and succinct, which is what we like. So, Karen, have we got any questions coming in?
Yeah, I think this is a really good one. Somebody said, why can't these law guys, the panel, get together and kind of sort things out and be crowdfunded? And I think when we set this up as the Lawful Remedy or the Clever Clogs or whatever, that kind of was my idea as a suggestion. But it's not as easy as that. When you start speaking to these guys, it's not as easy as that. As I've just said, it's not just about filling in a form and sending it off, is it? It's much deeper. It's much deeper. So I don't know if one of the panel want to address that. Anybody?
Just repeat the question for us.
So why can't these law guys get together? And where is it literally? Who's this coming from?
It's probably gone
It's-
miles
yeah,
up
it's
the
got- it's-
screen
yeah,
by now.
yeah,
That's
probably,
the trouble.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, here it's why can't these law guys get together and do a test case? We could crowdfund their fees. That's from Nout to Seer.
So what do you think? Is there a reason why a lot of these law people can't get together and almost form a
Organisation of some sort.
a sovereign organisation of lawful
Shall
people?
I answer that?
Yeah, please do, Dean.
So, with regards to what do you mean by a test case, so I'll just keep it quite broad, is that obviously I've been through my own case. So you have to be mindful that we are dealing with a fluid system that has been fine-tuned over many hundreds towards thousands of years. So this system has been fine-tuned. So if it was as simple as I'm going to fill out this one form and everything will be rosy, people are under another illusion that that's how the world works. It isn't how the world works. We must be able to stand up for what we believe in, and that doesn't come on one form. But with regards to people getting together, I believe this is a step towards people getting together, and like Karen said, it was her idea, and this is going to run for a few weeks, so we are coming together.
Right. Oh, good. Well, that sounds positive.
That's right. Job done. We can go home now.
Yes. Thanks very much, Dean. Shall we take unless anybody else has got a specific... put your hand up, by the way, to the panel, because you're actually on the side here, so I can look at your windows if you specifically want to answer. Oh, Suk, let's go to Suk. You're muted at the moment. Suk, you're muted. There we go.
Yeah, sure. One of the other reasons, to be honest, is that the law, or us law guys, one of the things we're trying to portray is that this is about sovereignty. This is about individuals understanding and knowing their rights. That's the journey that this period of this age is taking us through. People, there isn't a template, there isn't anyone else that can do it for you. The system, like they say, is fine-tuned in such a way that it will sniff out your fear, and that's where it will target you. You know, the three of us, and there's lots more than just the three of us. There's loads of people out there now that are really good people that you'll see on this panel. And we are all working together loosely so that we're not all in one room for them to come and take us out. We are all working together because we're all working from our conscience, and we're all working towards self-determination and sovereignty. But we can't do it for you in the same way that Christ couldn't save you for you.
Right.
He had to give you the messages and the lessons, and then you had to take that path.
Do you think one of the problems is that people just want an easy route? I mean, it just seems, because we've been so used to going to a solicitor and saying, "Oh, yeah, deal with this problem," and they go off, and we don't really know what they do, and they either do or they don't, or they may have a bit of shenanigans in between. Would you say that's the problem? We've just, like so much, we've given control to other people.
Yes, definitely. I think Pete has a really good view on this, actually. Pete, do you want to comment on this one?
People don't think they have a choice. They don't see an alternative.
Right.
And that's been the past paradigm. I think now what we have is a situation where people are beginning to realize there are alternatives to using a solicitor, to using those bailiffs, and understanding what the laws actually are and how they are created, if you like, and the difference between lawful and legal, which is one of the primary things you have to get. Lawful is a living jurisdiction of England versus legal, which is the dead jurisdiction of the UK or England and Wales. And so once you understand there's a distinction, then you can start going down into more detail and saying, well, why is that? Why do I need a solicitor to write me this or write me that? Why can't I write that myself? And the answer is, of course, you can. But they don't want you to, because then they lose their power. Yeah,
absolutely. Interesting. All right, brilliant. Thank you so much for that. Any more questions?
Yeah,
Karen?
we've got quite a few questions here. They're whizzing up quite quickly. So, for instance, I mean, some of them are probably going to be the same answer. Somebody said it's a personal journey. It's not a quick fix, is it? And you've got to do the work, the inner work, because we're at war. It's a spiritual battle we're at here. And I think that's what most people need to understand, rather than just filling in forms and just saying, there's a straw man and capital letters. You've really got to go within. But for instance, if maybe the panel can ask these two questions, because I don't know the answer, but it might be the same answer for both. Do we have to pay for the driving license? And if we don't, what happens to it? Or what happens to us if we don't pay? And are all mortgages, are they legal? Are mortgages legal? So two different questions, but I imagine the answer is going to be the same. But what do I know?
Well, let's find out from our wonderful panel. Yeah. Who would like to take that? I think Suk has got... Because Dean, you're quite dark, by the way, so you may have to wave vigorously if you want to talk. Because on my little screen, I can barely see.
But I
can see Sue. Over to you, sir.
Yes, so yes, mortgages are unlawful, and probably the best thing to do there is have a look at the Great British Mortgage Swindle. There's a whole documentary on it, rather than take up lots of time on the call, because they go into it beautifully on there. In terms of driving. The driving, like when you say, do you have to pay for it? I'm not sure whether they mean the documentation of the license itself. The question seems a bit wide, but I'll try and answer it. In terms of, you've got inalienable rights which are bestowed on you by the fact that your blood flows and your flesh lives. It's got nothing to do with any documentation. And if you are capable and competent to operate a conveyance, a car, otherwise known in the corporate world as a vehicle, then, and you wouldn't cause anyone else any loss, harm, or injury through your conscience and you're driving correctly, then no, you don't need a license to drive lawfully. I don't, however, suggest if you rely on your car that you throw your license in the bin and start operating without it. I have done that, and I have tested that route. And if you're a taxi driver, for example, you're not going to have many happy customers, right? Because you're going to get stopped a lot. So, what is the truth and what are our rights and us fighting for them versus can you just go out there and do it? I think I said before, when you start to take on this fight, there's three things that I really, really insist people consider. Firstly, what is it that you can't afford to lose from a material perspective, financial perspective, spiritual perspective, psychological perspective? What you can't afford to lose, get it off the battlefield, put it in a trust, sell it, do whatever you got to do with it, get it out the way. If you genuinely can't afford to lose stuff. The stuff that you're prepared to fight with, that stuff, you then need to think about how you're going to protect it, and you have to be prepared to lose it in the fight. So if you've got an E-type Jag, don't change the number plates on it for something random, perhaps. Get a banger or something. If you can afford to lose the E-type, why not? Do it in style. But, if you can't afford to do it, then, get something you can afford to. Yeah. And then, these things are really important. A lot of people are going out there to try and get out of paying something or to try and save money. If that's your driving force, you're going to come up with a lot of trouble, to be honest with you, because you have to have the conviction to follow this through. And to some degree, you have to set yourself up psychologically and to some degree materially in how your assets are structured before you take the fight on. Otherwise, you have to call in superheroes like Pete and that. And they start to get stretched very thin when life gets to this point.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, that's very interesting. I like the analogy of the battlefield, because it really is a battlefield, isn't it? And,
yeah, we're at war.
And you send over the troops that you are disposable.
Yeah,
like they did in the First World War.
Yeah, well, like they still do, I think.
And they still do.
Cannon fodder.
Yeah. So
can I just go back to the previous question when somebody asked about a test case? They were saying the point was missed because they really want the opportunity to prove that the council tax is unlawful. So what would...
Oh, right. So get us lot to...
not us, me, somebody.
But clever people to make a test case. And I mean, we are seeing those sort of things, aren't we? With Leighton and Stuter is a sort of...
Yes.
A test case. It's sort of halfway house.
Yeah, because it is a numbers game, isn't it? I think the whole lot, if a lot of us all came together and came on the battlefield at one time, but I don't know how possible, how feasible that is.
Yeah, Pete's got his hand up.
Yes. So the way that I approach it, along with a friend of mine, is that I wouldn't advise anybody to go into the court, because the court isn't a court; it's a venue. It's the first thing you have to understand. The court is the paperwork, because we're under Roman administrative law. It's all administrative law. And for clarification, administrative law means that there's no jury present. Okay? So when you go in there and they have the body, habeas corpus, they can just do what they want to you because you're there. You've already accepted liability for the name. We're talking about the name. We kind of haven't really clarified that yet. But in Roman civil administration, your all caps name is called Capitis Diminutio Maxima. It's all caps. It's actually American Sign Language. And you know that if you go and look at, there's two ways of discovering this. One is the Oxford Manual of Styles, which doesn't have capitals in it at all. And then you have what's the name of it now? The other Manual of Styles, Chicago Manual of Styles. Yes. And in that, it's 111 point something. I forget the exact number. But it tells you that all capitals is ASL. It's American Sign Language. So it's a glyph. It's sign language. It's not English. It's called glossa. It's debased Latin. All right. But it's not English. And on a contract, because what we're looking at when you're sent paperwork is an offer to contract. Right. So these two, this paperwork that you receive with all capitals on it, and then lowercase, and then capitalized first letter, and that's different languages. And when you have more than one language on a page, it's blank. It doesn't mean anything. So there's a deeper depth that you need to get to understand what's actually happening, what you're getting in the post, what you're reading. So if someone writes to you with an all capitals name, that's not you. And if you accept liability for it, then you take responsibility for that name in commerce, because it's a contract that you're being offered, and then you're on their ship, as it were, and you have to follow their rules. So with the car example earlier, do you have to pay for a license? Well, you registered your car with DVLA and you became the registered keeper. You don't own it, you're keeping it. DVLA own it, which means they can take it away from you and they can enforce traffic laws upon you.
Right. Okay. I had a question then as you were talking, and the brain
Your
decided...
question or somebody?
No, a question on the back of what you were saying,
right.
But in terms of the capital... the question is that the people who are writing these letters to you, the front office, as it were, presumably they've just been told this is the style that we write them in. They probably don't know. Is that right? Would you say that the people, they probably have no idea that they're writing in glossa?
I would probably agree with you. But will you give them notice? Because that's how we deal with things. You don't use their forms. You don't use their approach. You give them notice. Okay. So your first notice is conditional acceptance or notice to show cause. So you say, okay, well, I conditionally accept. So council tax free is a classic example. So you write to me and say, oh, you need to, because when you get a council tax notice, you get notice. You don't get a bill. You don't get a statement. They give you a council tax notice. They're giving you notice. Well, you have 3 days to rebut notice, so you rebut it. Now, the simplest way to do that, when you get that in the post and you recognise that this all capital names is not you, is you get a blue pen, because it's commerce, so we use blue, and you scribble out your name and the address, because that's not your address. That's not where you live. You live in your body. This is the thing about being sovereign, flesh and blood.
Right.
That's where you live. This address is a military address. It's like that's why they have a postcode. That's your cell number, really. Right. So you scribble all of that out, and you write above false details because it's false. That's not you. And then underneath we write malicious communication, because Malicious Communications Act 1988 states that if you receive poison pen letters, anything through the post which is causing you harm, distress, or anxiety, that's malicious communication. Then onto the right-hand side, you write offer to contract not accepted, because it's an offer to contract. No consent is given. Then you turn it over, usually because there's a return address. You recircle the return address and you put it back in the post. And that's it.
So let me just ask you this then, because people will be getting their council tax bills right now for April. And you say 3 days. Firstly, is that 3 working days? Because we're now, if it arrives on a Friday, is that including Saturday and Sunday? And the second question is, can you do that, what you've just said, I don't wish to contract, with blue ink over that letter?
Yeah, you write it on the front of the letter you write, because it's usually a windowed envelope.
Yeah.
Again, is unlawful because it's internal mail if it's windowed. Shouldn't be going through the post in any case. Right, but you write false details above the window, you scribble out the name and address as they've given it, you put malicious communication below. To the right-hand side on the front of that envelope, you write offer to contract not accepted. Underneath, you write no consent is given. And then you usually have a return address on the back. You circle it, you put return to sender, put it back in a post box. right? Now, what you will find is they're not following the rules. They're not playing lawfully. Right? This is legal. We are under a military occupation because we're in England and they're in a different jurisdiction. Their jurisdiction is the UK or England and Wales, right?
Right, right.
So we have to say, well, oh no, I'm a living man, right, on the soil and land of England. I'm not in the UK. I don't accept that jurisdiction. So I'm going to say, have it back. I don't consent to this contract. Because a contract has between a man and a man, or a man and a woman, or a woman and a woman, not between a corporation. A corporation, you can't have a contract with a corporation unless you're a corporation. So this all capitals name is a corporation that they own. You don't own it, and they unlawfully convert you into that. You accept liability for it, and then you're now contracting with them.
So you're accepting liability by accepting jurisdiction, or by consenting to, or by thinking it's you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what do you do then if they're not playing by the rules? You know, it's all very well having these rules and saying, oh well, we don't consent to this, and they turn around and say, well, I'm sorry, we're going to send the boys round, which effectively is you know. And the other thing is, we're getting a lot of this. Freeman on the land is not acceptable for the council tax. Now let me just show you a graphic, not that one, because that's that we've done that one. Let me see where it is. I've got to find it now. It's not that one. Here we go. So this is from East Hampshire, and it says there, and this has been sent to one of my correspondents actually, one of my viewers, said Freeman on the land and challenges to the legality of the council tax. And it then goes on to say, you do not have a choice as to whether you are liable for the council tax. And being a free man on the land does not exempt anyone from paying council tax. So question is then, are we slaves?
Yes, we are. But the first thing I would say about that particular document is it is legal for them to charge you council tax. That's a legal thing. It's not lawful, right? And free man is a title. So again, they're converting you into this title. So I don't have that title. I'm not an occupier. I'm not a resident, right? I'm not a mister, right?
Right.
I'm just Pete, or as I prefer, Pete the Hat. That's who I am. That's my sovereign name.
Yeah. And but you've got to somehow then convince them, who are, especially the front office again, the people who are sort of there being whipped to... well, we don't have this nonsense. They're all mad. They're all mad. This freedom on the land business, this living man nonsense. They're just trying to get out of it. So that seems to be their approach, isn't it? And maybe the people in there believe it all. Perhaps the higher echelons know, and they're just saying, no, they're all mad. Just send the boys in with the big sticks.
Well, they're beginning to understand that isn't the case because they're being given notice, as I previously mentioned.
Right.
So when you give notice, it's the law of threes. You give your first notice is conditional acceptance. I conditionally accept that I should pay your council tax that you're charging me. But first of all,
why would you even conditionally accept it then?
But you conditionally accept with the caveat that first you have to answer these questions, and the questions are around jurisdiction. What is your jurisdiction?
Oh, okay.
Where does your lawful authority derive from? Are you a corporation? If you're a corporation, are you therefore a for-profit organisation? Various different things that will be addressed within the notice.
Yeah.
And once you send them a conditional acceptance and they don't respond, you say in the first notice, you give them 14 days, or at least I do, and you say, if you don't respond to this, I'll send you a non-response and give you a further 7 days, and then I'll send you a default and dishonour. At that point, if you haven't responded to any of my questions, it's a stoppal, right? You have no further claim upon me. And then what you've got with the 3 notices is prima facie evidence that you are acting unlawfully, right?
So I'm just looking at a comment there. Jeff Norton says you can tell them what you like, and he's written that in big capital letters to shout at us. They don't listen, he says.
No, they don't respond because they can't respond because that would be admitting the fraud. But once
I think what he means is they don't listen to your argument. They still come along, which I know personally because I know Jeff. That's happened to him.
Yes, that's happened to a lot of people. But if you're not standing in your sovereignty and you believe that's what's going to happen, what you give is what you get. So if you feel and fear that that's what's going to happen, that's what you create. That's another level. This is the spiritual side of it. You can't just have lawful and not have spiritual. You have to understand there's a balance that's taking place there, right? There's a bigger picture here.
So can I just come in here a little bit? When you're talking about the notice, it's not just a piece of paper, is it? It's a big document, because Pete has helped me out over a council issue, and it was like, I don't know, 64 pages with so much information, and so far, I'm on the winning side, if there is a side to be winning. It's helped me enormously. But again, you have to be prepared to stand up and sort of, fight the battle, really, and be prepared to go where it's going to take you. And also, I'd just like to say, are we recording this show, by the way? Somebody said yes, so we are recording it. Somebody at the very beginning of this said, well, without the council tax, how do we pay for the services? Which is quite a good question, because I do feel that we should pay a certain amount, to hospitals and roads and street lights and things like that. But I mean, surely we decide where it goes and, how much we put in. What would you say to that, one of you guys on the panel?
But Dean, we haven't heard from Dean.
Yeah,
there,
hi.
Dean?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so I like to go things from at the very root of it. So with regards to the council tax, how are they getting your name? How?
Presumably, you've given it to them.
Okay, so if you have given it to them, they are going to work on a presumption that you are going to pay council tax. How are they getting that fictional name? You must be able to comprehend that the birth certificate, i.e. the name, is not really a name, it's an account. You have to recognize it as like a bank account.
Right.
All of the government birth certificates, they have got basically bank accounts. And any bills that they are going to produce, i.e. the government, they're going to notch it down to your bank account. And you're going to be liable. So how are they getting the name? Because if they can't attach it to the name, i.e. an account, they can't charge you.
So if you've got your bill come back now from the council tax, the envelope that drops in at just before April in March, as we're all seeing here in the UK, in Great Britain, in England, whichever jurisdiction we happen to be in, and you just say, just return it then, as if to say, well, it's not me. Is that
No.
then not giving them the name?
No, because if they are writing to a person, they've already got that name. You see, the name, the birth certificate, was created by law. That law was words. They created it, so it is subservient to them. The birth certificate, i.e. the name, is the bottom of the ladder. So it has to pay all the bills. But how are they getting that name? If they can't attach a name to it, they can't bill it.
Right. Well, most people probably who are challenging this, for whatever reason, have been woken up and come to that, I would imagine, are already in their house and have already given their name in ignorance.
Well, then they have consented.
Then yes, but what you're saying is that it's tough tits,
Yeah,
mate.
you're stuffed.
I've lived in my house for 35 years nearly, and 35 years ago when I moved in, I was incredibly ignorant. In fact, I was ignorant to about 15 months ago. So, are you saying, well, that's tough, mate?
I'm saying that if you are using that name, which is actually not yours, you didn't create it, and you are accepting the liabilities for it.
So how do you not use that name? I mean, can you just change your name? I mean, people change their names. People have stage names, for example, or they just call themselves something different. Say, from now on, I'm known as Figglefod.
Isn't that something that you can do?
Yes, I can do it. I mean, I just called it. You can call me Figglefod from now on.
Well, there you go.
Easy.
But
Right.
but I don't think the council will be very, they'll go, well, you can call yourself anything, but we've come to get money from this name. So,
Yes. I mean, people will really become unnerved if they even think about not using their so-called legal name again. It will unnerve them. I mean, me and you spoke the other day about the birth certificate death. If you
Yes.
was to mention that to people, it will unnerve them.
Yes, and what you're referring to there is that when you, if you're looking after, say, a deceased parent and you become the executor of their estate, you are effectively putting that birth certificate to bed, as it were, about the death. But that's actually what's also happened about your birth certificate, because I think you said it's not the baby they're registering, but the placenta, which is dead. But they've named the placenta. Am I right? Is that what somebody told me that?
That's partially right, but it's never attached to the actual body. They simply get you to act for it.
Right.
That's what they need. It's like pin the donkey. Have you ever played pin the donkey?
Yes. Pin the tail on the
Push,
donkey.
that's right, yes.
Pin the tail on the donkey, right? So what they do is they pin the birth certificate to you, and you walk round and act for it.
Yes. Like, I mean, the way I look at it, only because I come from the entertainment background, it's like an agent looking after an author or a performer. An actor.
A manager.
Yeah, so you're sort of going, oh, yes, that Richard Vobes, yes, he's brilliant. He's fantastic, and you should book him. Whereas Richard Vobes, or the entity using that name, may not have quite so much clout if he's saying, oh, I'm brilliant. Whereas an agent can do that, and an agent might pay all his bills, for example, or look after him, just as a mother would do for their boys and girls.
Yeah, so if people view the birth certificate, i.e. the name, as a bank account, then give them a different perspective on what is happening.
But it doesn't stop the boys with the sticks coming and taking away your possessions or your goods or however they want to.
At the beginning was consent. If they've got your name, then you have probably given it to them in some ways. Therefore, you have consented.
Right.
So, for instance, the lady that's been in the news recently, our news, who has stage 4 cancer, that was evicted. Are we all aware of that story?
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, she's consented, I guess, and it's just too late for her. She hasn't done the homework. Is that how this is? We have to do the homework first before it gets to that stage?
Yeah, you have to be able to comprehend how this system works in order to avoid it.
So when it's come to that far, though, and also looking at some of the comments there, other people, you know, they might have said, I'm sovereign and stood in their sovereignty, but the boys in blue have come knocking.
So I'll just say it to you this, that for me, the two most important things, the moment there was more than one man or woman on this land, so the moment there was two people on this land, law and language must exist, because otherwise there would be conflict. So law and language must be learned by everybody.
Right. But the thing is, we are where we are, and people are learning this for the first time. I mean, let's just come back to that one point. Are you suggesting that if you've lived where you have lived and you are ignorant through not your fault because you were never taught this, is that it? Tough tits, you can't do anything about it because you've given that jurisdiction away. Can you not claim back? Can you not say, actually, hang on a minute, there's an error here? Because I was never told this when I was a kid. My parents were duped out of this. This contract that we have is not actually a meeting of the minds. It is null and void, and therefore I'm putting a line underneath it and changing my standing and admitting that this is who I am and I'm not that.
Well, everything that you do presumes that you are acting for that name, because let's say that you've put your title on the land registry, or you've somehow given it to the council tax, or you've given it to DVLA. Everything that we do, remember, it's not just what we say, it's what we do by our actions.
Sure, but can you not go back and say there's an error here? It's all been done by mistake, and correct that error and say, you've got me down as Richard Vobes, but actually I'm Figglefog.
Yep.
Well, no, why would you give them another name?
Well, okay, so you would say, well, I'm not that. Thank you very much. Good night.
Yes.
Right. Okay, has that answered that question?
Let's see if one of the other guys has any comments on this, because this is a biggie, isn't it, really? Because we all want to stand in our sovereignty and do the right thing, but we are being harassed. You know, I've had a recent issue with my car. You had an issue with your car. I caved in and paid the fine.
I'm still holding out.
You're still holding out, because I couldn't sleep at night thinking they're going to come and take my car. And it's not a very pleasant place to be.
No.
But as Suk says, you've got to be organised. You've got to be prepared. And I'm not quite ready there. After that, you know, there's work to be done.
Suk's got his hand up and wants to say something. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, I suppose we covered quite a lot of ground quite quickly there. I think some of those questions were answered. I'm just going to quickly try and keep it brief, just going back to a few points because we've been jumping around. So the first one was, why do we provide a notice of conditional acceptance? And Pete went into that quite nicely. The only bit I just wanted to add on to that is because the other thing, the difference between the Jedi and the Sith, the difference between those who are operating from a platform of love versus those who are operating from a platform of fear, is that those who are operating from a platform of love are stood in truth. And when you're stood in truth, you're fearless. So when you're fearless, the notice of conditional acceptance shows you're fearless because it says, I will accept what you are saying if you can prove to me that what you're saying is truthful. Right. And because you are in absolute confidence of the matter that you're in at hand, and because you understand your conscience and you stand in honor when you do it, okay, it's really important because you're not trying to fool them. You're being open. So for me, the fact you can basically state that it was a mistake of fact. Right, in law, it was a mistake of fact that I ever thought that I was a birth certificate or a capital name. There's documents you can write to cancel that out because you haven't consented to something for which you didn't know the terms and conditions for. It's all fraud and it's all corruption. The fact that they think that that's how they want it to work doesn't make it legal or lawful in this instance. The irony here is most of what they're doing isn't even legal, let alone the fact it's not conscientious or lawful. Yeah, because they become that complacent in what they're doing and incompetent. Now, we are up against possibly the most formidable, at least the most audacious opponent in living and recorded history. Never before has someone tried to take control of the entire population of the world with a single event, such as they have with COVID-19 and locking people down and all the rest of it. So, you know, when you're up against people like that, it's difficult. The Donbass region voted for their independence and have got the Russian military might to back them. That was their self-determination. That was their notice of conditional acceptance. And you've seen the level that the opposition will go to do that. Yeshua, Christ, was stood in truth. But people have to understand that if you want to follow and truth, you follow the trail of blood. And if you want to follow the deception, you follow the trail of money. And freedom and sovereignty is not a game that you can play while being in fear of losing your car or even losing your head.
Right.
Okay. In this battle, people first, as I said at the beginning, what people have to get really to terms with is what's more important to you. And when you come to terms with the fact that death is far more favorable than life as a slave, then you've made the jump into the world of sovereignty. But if you think, and look, it's not for the other part of sovereignty, it's your decision. You may prefer peaceful slavery to dangerous freedom. Okay, Thomas Jefferson said that he preferred dangerous freedom to peaceful slavery. And that's a decision for each person. There are people who may well choose slavery. And I respect that choice. It's not my decision. And I suspect it's not a decision of the individuals that I've spoken to on the call, but it's a decision that some people will choose to take.
Sure.
And
I guess as we transition now, because I mean, it's clearly that all of this is coming to some form of head by the fact that there are loads of podcasts and we're all talking about this and we're making it. That there are probably some people who will go, yeah, this sounds good, but I'll just carry on paying until the tipping point is reached, and then I'll join the fight. And that might be okay because some people may be in their 70s and they're just not they're not up for it. The fear or the fight or whatever it is, the preparedness. So, but they may well be behind us, urging us on. Going, no, you go over the top first, and I'll be here with the kettle, which is always handy, isn't it?
It is. Nice
Yeah, sorry, the other 2 points really quick, I remember. The one which was around the council tax, and we need to pay for stuff. Okay, look, just think about it. There's 70 million, roughly, of us on this island at any one point in time. This island has provided sustenance for every generation that's ever landed here and every other generation that will ever land here after us. It has an infinite resource of wealth. It is infinite. It's a complete abundance. The notion that any individual soul who's here for a mere 70, 90 years should need to pay for public infrastructure, which is there for essentially eternity. It's nonsensical. The reason people think that is because you've been conditioned onto a scarcity model of economics, not an abundance model of economics. Right? And so that's a council tax. No, you don't need to pay towards it. It's paid through the collective productivity of the realm. Okay, that's why the states never used to have the taxes, because there is an economic model without tax that's there. And tax is unlawful, by the way. It goes against the Constitution and every ancient text, including the Torah, the Quran, the Gospels, the Ard Grant, and indeed the Constitution itself. That's a fact. And so I'm happy for him to try and challenge that. And the third one, really quickly, on the birth certificate. I have a slightly different view on this for people to try and understand this. The law pertains to the living, men, women, and their offspring. The legal is for the non-living entities. So not ghosts and ghouls, but corporations, institutions, charities, and governments. How I come from a deep systems background, designing systems and stuff. How I see what's gone wrong here is the birth certificate. And it's this reason. Living men and women may wish to contract with corporations for various services, a mobile phone, an internet connection, some other commodity or product someone's created. And they want to do it with a limited liability. I want to be able to buy a mobile phone, and in both directions, there's a limited liability. The whole point of the birth certificate is it's supposed to be a safety cutout fuse, that it's there as a profile into the corporate world. It is not supposed to be that you become the profile. It's like you thinking you're your Facebook avatar, that's really you. Yeah, that's what's happening. The birth certificate, if you understand it, is a legitimate gateway for the living to interact with the non-living, legal entities, corporations and everything else. But if the living feel that their inalienable rights have been infringed, they can pull that safety cutout fuse, which is the birth certificate, and then they can do all of the things that the gentlemen are talking about, because that understanding is there, that the legal is there for corporate non-living contracts which do not affect your inalienable rights. But as soon as your inalienable rights are infringed, you stand on them and you call law into action to hold the legal to account. The legal is not satanic. A system cannot be satanic. What's happened here is that people have been fooled into thinking they are something they are not. Something they are supposed to have control of is now controlling them. Okay, and that's the difference. For me, if I was to design a system for the future, it's exactly the system we've got today, but where people are using it as it's supposed to be used. The law is used through constitutional common law courts for the living and upholding inalienable rights. Legal is used for all the other stuff that has nothing to do with inalienable rights. And if any of that legal stuff infringes on your rights, you call the law to hold it to account. Then it doesn't even matter whether you put Hitler, Saddam Hussein, Pinochet, and Mao in cabinet. There's nothing they can do to harm you, because the moment they try, you call the court of common law and you put that legislation to bed, you nullify it. And so that's the birth certificate for me. It was a system designed for a purpose, but people have got really mixed up. And now there's sort of traumatic emotions attached to the legal. You know, we just need to know what it is and how to use it. And then there's very little that actually needs to happen as a change.
And do you think that when... No, brilliant. Fantastic answer. and description of it. So do you think that when the birth certificate came in, that was the intent, but somehow, I mean, I'm sure the early adopters of the birth certificate didn't really, I mean, they still called themselves those names, presumably.
So I believe, honestly, I'm just going back, but what do I believe? I believe there were some good guys that were told that was the intent. And then I think there were some other guys who knew full well what they were going to do over the coming decades and centuries.
They could
and
see
everything is sold with good intent.
Right. Yeah, it is.
Everything is sold with good intent. That's how they convince you. But then in the background, the subtleties and the subversion comes in, and that's the genius of the illusion and the deception.
Shall we? Thank you so much for that. Shall we move on to some? It's we're about almost an hour in. Shall we move on to some other questions at this point?
Yeah, we can
vary
do.
it up a bit, because I have a feeling that on these sessions we're going to come back to a number of these very big issues, aren't we?
Yeah, and they are big issues. They're huge issues. One was quite interesting that I picked up. Somebody said sovereign. So because this is a word game, isn't it? We've all been told different names and different words and understand and stand under, etc. Somebody said sovereign is their language because of royalty. So, you know, we're all saying we're sovereign. Are we saying we're royalty? We're above royalty? What's that one all about?
So the definition of sovereign for us,
yes,
then, is
yeah,
that
for
what
us,
it is?
mere mortals, us, yeah, mere peasants.
Anybody on the panel like to take that one on? The understanding of the word sovereignty or being sovereign. Is it the king or is it us? I'm looking. None of the panelists.
No hands gone up. Yeah, I mean, so I would expect to answer this because that's his avatar, isn't it? Sovereign mind.
The honest language existed way before the sort of subverted definitions came into play. So, you know, for all of these things, there were sovereign kings before there was a sovereign corporate entity. So the fact that they've taken language and subverted it, we just need to take it. You know, it's our language. At the end of the day, it's humanity's language. Take it back. Population's out. You take it back. You take it back with education and knowing what the true meaning of those words are.
Mm. Yes, and we are all royal. Yes, somebody's saying yes, we are all royal. Like it. Okay, that's great. That's great. And another one that keeps popping up. See, it might have gone now. Is say Kiwi Trust. Does that mean anything?
The Sesta Trust.
Oh, Sesta The Sesta I was trying to be French. Sesta What is it? Latin.
Say it in a French way.
Okay, no. Later, darling.
Here we go.
Hands up.
Sook again.
So, this is a really contentious issue within the whole of the truth movement. So, whether or not it exists in the context of it being some sort of a trust fund stuff doesn't matter. If we imagine how the bankers work, what we have to understand is that when they're trading, you can trade in current. They have something called futures. And in futures, what you do is you trade what you think the future value of a stock is going to be. That is essentially how the birth certificate is being operated by the bankers. They are basically looking at it and saying, right, an individual in the realm of the UK is worth to us, say, £2.5 million over their lifetime in productivity. And so that's the value that they're trading on the stock market based on the value that you will bring into the business of the UK. Okay, so the Sesta Trust, in the way they're using it as a future commodities thing. That's one aspect of it economically. The other side of it is there are, for argument's sake, 8 billion people on this planet. That means each person has 1/8 billionth of the gold, 1/8 billionth of the water, 1/8 billionth. That's not practical. So you could see it as they've put in a number of trust funds which have a quantity that is the equivalent of 1/8 billion of the resources of the world. And now you have an abundant account from which you can express and live your life. Okay? And someone's taken that using the birth certificate, they flipped it, and they're using that account against you instead of for you. So you've become the trustee of that trust, to use a metaphor, rather than the beneficiary of that trust. Now, the other hocus pocus and stuff that goes around that trust fund stuff, I don't want to get into, but in my opinion, from an economics perspective and a deception perspective, that in Fisher Price terms is how I see it.
Grand. Well, I hope that answered the question, gentle listener, viewer. So yeah, no, and well, as you say, you didn't want to get into it, so I won't open that up. We've got quite a few questions, so let's move on.
We have, and another one again is a questions like how to get the original manufacturer certificate of the origin for the car. How can you get hold of that?
Can you get hold of it?
Can you get hold of that? And why? So? Any other hands? Oh,
we've got Pete the Hat.
Pete the Hat.
Well, I would say, in my experience, no one's actually tried that I know of. We only think it exists. It's been talked about, manufacturer certificate of origin. There's another name for it which I forget off the top of my head, but we know that if you register with DVLA, say you purchase a new car, they automatically send that certificate to DVLA, so they own the car and you become the registered keeper.
Why do they own the car? This is, because you have a receipt.
Our whole what would you call it? System is built on certificates. You have a certificate to show that you're the one who's qualified. The certificate to show you have a certificate to show you're vaccinated, essentially, right? You have a certificate, right, and a certificate for that, and that gives you access then, or allows you to do something. So if you have the certificate for the manufacturer's certificate of origin, you can then prove that you own the property. It's your property. It's not a car. It's not a vehicle. That's their language. You have to understand the language that's in use here. And so if you then can prove that you own it, as soon as you register with the DVLA as well, you're in commerce, because you've got a contract with the DVLA that, as a consequence of which, says that you're in commerce, which is why they can enforce acts upon you, traffic acts upon you, because that's not your property, that's their property. They own it. It doesn't belong to you. So they can do what they like with it. And the birth certificate, going back to that, because the birth certificate, when the mother informs on the child, the state owns that birth certificate and therefore owns the child, which is why the state can come to your house and take your children away. It's the same principle.
Right. So, okay, go back to the conveyance, the car, the vehicle. Even though you have handed over some money, or even, let's say, gold, to get rid of fiat currency for the moment, and you've got a receipt for that, you still don't own it.
No, because when you register it with your V5C2, you're then giving ownership to the DVLA. So as soon as you register anything, you give away your title.
Right. Even though you are you are ignorant of that fact, you haven't agreed to it.
Well, most people are ignorant of this fact. That's what this is about.
Right.
They don't understand what title is.
No. So again, the meeting of the minds, as they might say, in terms of a contract between the two of you,
you've no understanding that you've actually consented to the contract.
So does that not make it null and void?
It does, but then you have to call it out and rescind it.
So can you go back? Can you go back to the DVLA, as some people are doing, and saying, actually, I just want to correct that, because although I may have registered it in the past, that was an error, that was a mistake, because I was ignorant of how it should have been done, and actually now I'm informing you that it is actually mine because I've paid for it and I've got the thing, and I'm correcting the mistake. Could you do that?
Alternatives have been suggested of deregistering from the DVLA, from exporting it to England, which is a living jurisdiction, to asking them to give you the manufacturer's certificate of origin. But you're up against a fraudulent and organised criminal entity. So they're not going to play ball, right? Which is why we use notice. Because if you don't rebut it after I've given you the 3 notices, and further still, if I produce an affidavit, which is in their world, and use the notices as evidence, right? An affidavit, unrebutted, point for point, stands as a judgment. You don't have to go to a court; it's judgment. But again,
if they're just carrying on playing fraudulently, I mean, surely they're just, like they seem to be, just ignore even all of that.
Well, it becomes a numbers game. If everybody changed their number plate overnight, what would they do?
Well, that's true. Yeah, no, you're quite right. And that's the
You're going to stop everybody and try and process them. It's impossible.
No.
So people have to wake up and take back their sovereignty by taking action. And you start with what you're about, as Suk says, what you're willing to lose in that fight, and what you're not, and move forwards. And we're all finding different avenues that we can take in order to challenge this system that we know is fraudulent, in order to take back our sovereignty one step at a time. And the more people that do that, the greater the impact. So it's building momentum and gradually moving forward. And there will be a tipping point.
How far do you think we are from that tipping point then?
I couldn't say. I don't think that's possible to say.
No.
Because a few people on the chat here are saying, okay, it's spiritual, we get that, it's sovereign, it's equity, it's natural law, but they just want like a quick answer, you know, as we all do, I guess, because that's the world in which we live now. Everything's so immediate, isn't it? And people are saying it's a numbers game, which we are aware of. But is there any way of like joining those two things together, getting enough people to fill in, you know, these rebuttals, these notices? Is there a shortcut? Or do we all have to sort of get this eureka moment thinking, oh, now I get it, I've got to do this work?
No, there's no shortcut. You have to build communities. You have to build communities who are willing to cooperate with other men and women outside of that system. And that's a first step in the right direction, I believe.
Well, I think that's where I started. You know, the Freedom Network was to do that, to create these communities all over the country, all over the world, and I think a lot of them have come together. So many people have come together, but then and you know, whether it's growing food or home educating your children or creating some other form of currency, because we haven't even talked about currency yet with the possible digital, you know, stuff that they're going to throw our way. But even though you have got these communities being built, Is there a way, you know, for these groups of people to you know, a shortcut? Again, I've come back to the same question.
Sook's got his hand up here.
Has he? Oh, yes.
Yeah, there's no shortcuts, and there's no shortcuts for really, really good reasons. And once you understand those reasons, you would push back against shortcuts, because the problem we have here is that, you know, unfortunately, people have been raised over the last 100 years with a lack of resilience, a lack of attention span, and now they're throwing all sorts of acronyms as to why you've got no attention, and why you've got this problem and that problem. Look, there is a deep healing process that individuals have to go through and the collective has to go through as a result of where we've got to. There are no shortcuts to the sovereignty. It's shortcuts that got us into this mess, right? Because people haven't taken the time. The best things in life, there are no shortcuts to. You can't make a baby in 4¼ months with 2 women, right? There are certain gestation periods that have to occur in nature, and some of those are for intelligence and consciousness to percolate through people's beings, so that they can start to be knowledgeable in that, then they can start to understand it, and then they can start to live wisely, and they can actually start to apply it. So there are no shortcuts. And you know, I mean this as a deep spiritual comment. Those people looking for shortcuts first need to look at themselves as to why they're looking for shortcuts.
Yeah,
you know, that is the problem here. You know, you haven't fully understood the problem if you think that the solution can be solved with a shortcut.
I love that. It's
sorry, just sneezing off
a sneaky sneeze.
I was going to ask you then, because if a lot of people are sort of pushing people to say not pay their council tax, but they haven't fully embraced exactly what you've been saying, and the ideal would be to build communities so that there are the numbers to then do it when everybody's understood. Perhaps then not paying your council tax is not the right answer at this stage for some people who might ordinarily have wanted to challenge it, but don't feel fully embraced and don't want to lose the battle. But when because I feel that communities are building, and I feel that over this year and next year we're going to see a huge amount, but people may not be, you know, they may be wanting to concentrate on building the communities rather than fighting off the system at this stage, because the system seems to be getting weaker and weaker. And
I think, I know Six got his hand up, but I think one needs support, which comes from communities. And a lot of people are going through this chat. They're saying, you know, do we on the panel or sitting in your studio here, are we paying our council tax? I mean, it's not about that. That's irrelevant, to be honest. Well,
I mean, I was going to challenge it this year, but then I'm wondering, maybe I shouldn't be not paying the council tax this time round, and concentrating on building communities and putting my eggs into that basket rather than, I mean, it's bad enough with the enforcement agent desperately trying to take my van away.
You've got to choose your battles.
For clean air, you know.
Absolutely.
For a stupid thing.
Which should be free anyway. You have to choose your battles.
Dean is waving.
And so is Sook. Bless them. Look, they're chomping at the bit here.
Yeah, let's go to Dean. Dean.
Yeah. Richard, that was very honest of you to say so. And my words are to people is that don't go further than you're willing to go, because it gets very real very quickly.
And Sook is nodding. We can't see him, but he's in agreement with you.
Yeah. And I'm nodding as well.
Right.
We're nodding.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, part of this is a learning curve for myself, and I've been listening, as you will be well aware of, over the last 15 months, talking to all sorts of interesting and delightful contributors. And part of my thought was, well, we ought to just be en masse not paying the council tax, because I disagree with handing my money over to terrorists who are handing the money over to arm battles overseas, which have no concern to me or indeed my fellow man and woman here. And so, you know, morally, I feel I shouldn't be paying this bloody thing, but at the same time, now I'm feeling, well, maybe I ought to just
prepare yourself.
Yeah, accept that, even though it's against their own rules to aid and abet terrorism.
Good.
Deal with that, but concentrate on I mean, for me, the farming and communities is and food is the number one thing.
Richard,
I think
yes,
it will come to you. Listen to yourself. It will come to you.
Say a bit more.
Meaning, don't force yourself to make an action. It will come to you when you are ready. It will come to you. You will do it. You will know it. Yeah,
and I thought I was there, but dealing with just this stupid, you know, a £9, whatever it is, to drive in
Bristol, wasn't it?
In Bath, you know, for two £9, one going to the hotel and one coming out, and now this guy coming there with my name spelt wrong, not listening at all, and wanting like 800 quid out of me. I mean, I just feel that's so morally wrong. I can't pay that, because I know my van is at risk that they'll take it, and then I'll have to pay, and they'll have the £200 or £250 on top for the truck. But I also feel if I acquiesce, then the people watching will go, well, if they can do it to Richard Vobes, they can do it to us, and we won't challenge it. Not that I'm putting myself up. It's just having a public face.
Just one point
go on, Dean.
So on the sort of truck, the car thing, you're obviously in the system, so you could use the system. You could put it in a trust, and therefore you, as in the name, wouldn't own it. So any debts that would be attached to that name, i.e. your name, couldn't be attached to the trust. So there is a way around that, but you need to be fully able to comprehend the trust system to do it. I think for me, I don't like monkey see, monkey do. I like monkey to be able to understand what the monkey's doing.
Who are you calling a monkey? So, swine. Yes, I suppose for me it's like the speed of you know, because the guy may turn up tomorrow. That's the thing, you know, that you just never know. It may turn up in the next 10 minutes. You may see me being dragged out
and I'll have to press all these buttons.
And
so
you
let's hope not. I'll pay the fine.
Oh, will you?
Well, I did for mine.
Well,
when they came knocking on my door,
I'll hold that to you. Karen said she'll pay it. I'll ring them up now.
I was only joking.
Oh, swine. By the way, just as I'm going to just add this for the fun of it. I mean, they do say in their documentation that they want to control my goods. And so I thought, well, I might have a little scrounge around the house and fill up a bag full of stuff I don't want anymore, and would have taken down the tip. But they could sell it and just send it to their P.O. box address. Do you think that's a good idea?
Yes.
Yes.
Because they want the goods. It's just like, do you want some more? You want my stuff? take it, and then at least I've offered it to them, haven't I?
Yes.
I mean, I'm offering some stuff. They may not like it, delivered, constant loads of stuff. I mean, as long as it's not offensive, I'm not going to put feces in there.
Old socks and stuff.
And old socks, yeah. But there might be some old tech here that they could sell. And they say, look, this is from 1992. Actually, I've got some old cameras. They might, I'd be pleased to get shot of them, to be honest. So Dean reckons that's a good... Sue, over to you, sir.
Yes, so I mean, the first thing I want to say was that from a natural law perspective, the objective of your life is not to pay bills.
Right.
The objective of your life is to live a fully expressive life consciously, to experience the love and all the emotions and everything else. Right? So a lot of people have started their lives, you've got young children, you've got dependent parents. That's why I said at the beginning, don't risk anything you can't afford to lose. Right? If people are going into position, at the same time, there is a clock ticking. There is going to be a point where everyone is going to be in a position where there's people knocking at the door. The economy's ran out of money in 2008, 2010. So there's two parts to this. I know someone famously called me a dangerous wanker for going around asking people to take action. But the one thing that sort of I'd rebut that is that I've always told people, don't take on what you can't afford. If you choose to stop paying council tax and it causes you chronic anxiety that you are no longer a good mother or father and you're destroying your responsibilities in natural law because you tried to follow someone else, that's not good. Your primary responsibilities are to be a conscientious parent and everything else. Maybe your fight is to homeschool the children, make sure that they go completely against the system. It's a multi-generational fight. You haven't got to do it all before you retire, but you've got to pick a strategy over 1, 2, 3 generations that's going to be effective. You don't have to do it all in one go. But at the same time, remember that the economy has collapsed and that there are more and more people. The reason that we've got so busy and there's so many of us now is there's more and more people feeling the pain. And pain is what wakes people up, not truth. If truth woke people up, people would have stopped smoking when they put the gory photos on packets years ago, right? When the pain strikes, people will then have their minds focused. So don't cause yourself anxiety. When you'll know you're winning when you're having fun with it, like you said. Sending them the goods you don't want. You're trolling them, right? I've had loads of times. Just for a record, I took the car and deregistered it with DVLA, and I was driving around for about 2.5 years, without any DVLA whatsoever. I even changed the number plates for the last 12 months to a Royal Mail tracking number, which is what's used as a Postmaster General number. Okay, the police stopped me 6 times. 5 times they let me out. Once, even the 6th time, when they took the car in and said they wouldn't let it out without the number plates. I've got video evidence of the car leaving the pound with the number plates on. Okay, I have paid the government nothing for over 4 years, and I'll never pay a corrupt organisation anything. I'd rather rot in hell on earth than have to answer for that at this pearly gates, whoever's on duty that day when I get there. Okay, there are certain questions, and there's a certain seriousness and severity to it that people also have to meditate on. Yeah, it's not about your bills and stuff. This is much deeper than that. This is about your sovereignty, your freedom, your conscience, and you operate in your free will.
Yeah.
So it's if this is about money, don't take this fight on, because if you want to make money, you're much better off in the system. Okay, but if you want a life that's fulfilling with contentment, and you want to go out there and live a life based on love and abundance and transparency, then that's what it is. There's 2 countries you can live in that I offer you. One is lawful. You can do anything you want as long as you don't cause anyone else any loss, harm, or injury. In the other one, it's legal. You can't do anything unless you're given a permit or a license and told you can do it.
I guess, sorry to butt in, but I guess the people would like to know how to get into the lawful rather than the legal and not deal with the things. There's a lot of comments. I'm aware of people saying, there's too much philosophy going on. It's all a bit blah, blah, no real practical solutions. And again, it comes back, I guess, to that thing that people just want, and, sign here, write this, and you're out of it. And I think what we're getting from the panel is that's not actually how it works.
No.
Because it's a much deeper question, and those who perhaps want that instant fix are being too shallow.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
and I
think you're
don't
right.
mean to be rude to him.
No.
And
Yeah, no,
Pete
that is essentially what I'm saying. Yeah.
yeah,
To take
great.
ownership.
Pete.
Yeah. So if you want a not a solution, but a starting point for meeting with a community, something that turned up during the lockdowns was Stand in the Park movement. Now, I don't know if any of you've heard of it. I'm sure the ones who are on this panel certainly have.
Sure.
And I would say that go and look online, find Stand in the Park, find your nearest park that has their gathering. They're still ongoing around the country, and go and talk to people there and attend. It's on a Sunday at 10 a.m. usually, likely to be near you somewhere, and start forming communities.
Is there
Go and knock on your neighbour's door and say, "Do
Yeah.
you know about this? Do you think it's unlawful that we're being told to pay this and we don't even know why?" Tax is unlawful. It's fraudulent, as Suk has mentioned, right?
Yeah.
Why are we paying it? Where is it? Do you think that the money you're paying on car tax is going on roads? Well, if it isn't, then why are you paying it? I'm not suggesting you withhold, because you have to understand the implications of the actions you take, but you have to start questioning, where is it all going? Right? Why is that happening? And what can you do about it right now for you? And if you need support, go and find support. Don't just sit online and watch YouTube channels, although I'm not suggesting you should stop doing that. But go and find other people who are like-minded. Seek them out. And
Can I just say on that basis, because somebody just said they've turned up to the park and nobody was there, because I know a lot of the stand in the parks have died a bit of a death. My local one, I don't attend it, to be honest, but there's not many people that go. The Freedom Network is still running, so you can also find your communities or set one up just by going on to thefreedomnetwork.co.uk, and then you'll come to me and I'll just add you on the map. There's an interactive map. You can see where your local group is, or I can put you on there. And also, once these communities do develop, which they are, we know they are, they're all forming. Somebody did mention, who was it, Tilly? She said to set up lawful centres. I mean, how does that sound? Setting up a lawful centre.
Great idea. Go champion it. Off you go.
Yeah.
Let's go and set up a lawful centre, right?
Yeah.
Invite people in.
Yeah, and see what happens. I know. It's easy to say as people hear Joe blogs, bless
But
him.
at least they're talking. I mean, you know,
It's a
even if
start.
you did that and it doesn't work very much, it might draw in
start.
people who have never thought of that
Yeah.
before, and you're starting a conversation which is away from the old conversation.
Yeah.
You have to recognise the power is within you. That's where it's derived from. Okay, so I would also say something that we've not mentioned yet, but is part and parcel of finding your own sovereignty. For me, and certainly for a lot of others I know, you have to meditate. You have to look within. You have to direct yourself to look within. The answers aren't out there. And as Dean said, trust yourself. When you're ready, you'll know. Well, that comes from within. So I would also say, meditate. And people say, "Oh, I haven't got time. That's the usual excuse. Say, when you wake up in the morning, wake up 10 minutes earlier, do it for 10 minutes. It's very simple. Saying you haven't got time is a way of not committing to doing something which you don't see the value of. If you don't see the value of it, obviously don't do it. But I would urge people, try it. And don't just try it for a week or a day. Set yourself a month and do it every 10 minutes, every morning for a month, and see if it has a positive effect. And how do I meditate and all those questions? Just don't worry about all that. Stop asking. Just let go and just see what comes up. And give yourself the space to have peace, to not have to worry, to not have to think about all the things that are stressing you and causing you anxiety. And just for that 10 minutes, let it all go and see how that works for you.
I was just going to say, but just to sort of manage between the panel and the audience, we've got more of these with different panel members coming. So if you're not happy with the answers that you're getting here, that's you may want to join us on another one where we have different panel members who may have a different perspective on how to do it, and that will be next Friday at 8 o'clock. I just thought I'd get the advert in. Sorry, Suk.
Yeah, no, there are technical people out there who go through the stuff that people want, nuts and bolts. But when you say when people say it's too philosophical, it's shallow from a scope perspective. And the reason it's shallow is because you're in a fight and you're taking on a warrior archetype scenario. Bruce Lee, Mike Tyson, all of the great warriors, fighters, martial artists all have a philosophy. That's what gives them the grounding to be able to take on the fight. Without that philosophy, without a life strategy, without a belief system, they wouldn't be able to do it. And the stronger your belief system is, the stronger you're rooted in truth and understanding, the more powerful you'll be.
Yeah.
And when you're saying that these guys have got the numbers and they've got the men and they've got the big buildings, they've got the fast jets, what they haven't got is the depth of consciousness and soul that you've got. But that doesn't come from filling out a form. That comes from thinking about your life, thinking about what it means to you, thinking about whether or not, you know, when next time you're asked a question, what's more important to you, your life or your freedom? These are questions that have to be asked. Is that thinking needs to be deep? At the end of it, you might come up with the same answer.
Yes.
But it's not a process or a template. There's people that are winning this fight with no processes and no templates. Okay, they're not using any of that. They are just basically saying, I'm not consenting. And that's it. I stand under the creator, and that's it. So, you know,
and people are actually saying that in the chat there.
Yeah.
And I think that you've made there a really interesting argument, which actually resonates with me, because effectively what you're saying is you need to think about your long-term strategy. You know, if you take that war scenario that you're talking about, the battle, you wouldn't, as just having your army go, well, okay, then it's a free-for-all, go and attack them, because that would be stupid, because effectively you're just throwing stones and they're missing, they're wide of the mark, they've got no sights, the weapons aren't particularly well, or you're not even trained to fire those weapons. You know, you've got a bow and arrow and you don't know which end to put the arrow in.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so having that, you know, what they're sort of saying is philosophy, which I guess it is just having structure and a knowledge on your approach, and then I guess that the belief that you mentioned is about staying with that right the way through the course, or only changing when you know that's the time to do it, rather than going with a scattergun approach. You're going, well, I tried notices, now I'm going to try this, or I'm going to try that.
Exactly.
And you've weakened your...
Yeah, it's being prepared, isn't it?
Yes.
Being
Exactly.
prepared.
Yeah. And look, there's three steps that we say to follow. The first thing is follow no one. Okay. The second one of that is write no one off. And the third one is take each piece of information and data on its own merit, applying critical thinking and analysis. Okay, if everyone tried to follow those three steps, not only would they be sovereign, but all controlled opposition would be nullified and neutralized overnight. You know, all of the people that are misleading people, because everyone will be following their own conscience, right? And your path and journey through this, whatever your life is, whatever decisions and however you choose to live it, your success has got nothing to do with whether everyone else is successful or not. Right. Yeah. So whether you have a successful spiritual journey, ascendancy, whatever you want to call it, is not tied into whether the collective joins you or not. And if the collective doesn't join you, it just means that this wasn't that point in history. And then you just go again. We shouldn't be mostly invested in that. We should be doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because we're going to think, not because we think we're going to save the world.
Yeah. You say, I'm going to be a bit facetious here, but you say you don't follow follow yourself. It's very difficult when you have a wise man with a beard, because
they're the ones to look out for. You don't trust anyone that's got long hair.
You know, Gandalf had a beard.
And looks like that Sadhguru idiot off YouTube. You don't follow those people. Don't say I didn't warn you.
I should grow a beard, and people would then maybe listen to the nonsense I come out with. Pete, mind you, maybe we should follow people with hats. Pete the Hat has got his hand up.
Yeah, no, and Suk's right. You know, don't get significant, right? You know, we're only as strong as the values we hold, I think, or the ethics we hold, even the morals we have. So he made a nice little list. I thought I'd give you mine. So I have, because it's a philosophy, is right. It's a philosophy you live by. That's what determines you do or do not do, because inaction is just as important as action. So for me, it's do no harm, right? Help others, because that gives you access to growth. And if you're not growing, you're atrophying. Forgive and bless. If you don't forgive, you're going to keep turning that wheel of karma, right, for yourself and for others. So you have to forgive and bless others. This is not my enemy. This is someone who needs my love in order to grow, right? And then the fourth thing is keep your word, because that's how you're whole. See, people misunderstand integrity. They think that it's professionalism, but it isn't. It's whole like the hull of a boat, has no holes in it. So if you give your word to someone to do something, then do it. And also to yourself. If you are going to say something you're going to do for yourself, do it for yourself. those are the four things that I try to live by, and that informs how I then move forwards.
I think this is really interesting because I think people have come here with the idea that, oh, great, we can just get some easy answers to some immediate problems that we've had. And actually, although some of the viewers out there may well disagree because that's what they want, this is a much deeper process because it is about who we are and how we not just deal with this, but our whole aspect on life. And being in honour, which is a very important thing to be.
Yeah,
Would you
absolutely.
agree on
And
that?
yeah, absolutely. And with integrity, exactly what these guys have said, totally. And it's really hard to get that because it's a feeling. It's not something you can just pick up and read a book or listen to what somebody says. You have to go through some stuff really to get to that understanding of what this is all about. And it's a spiritual battle that we're in.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think that it's important that if we did just come on here and give people those easy processes, we would basically be getting you into a lot of trouble, right? Because, and that's the thing. That's been the biggest worry, is that people do it out of panic or to keep up with the Joneses, or they feel like peer pressure to do it. They're all wrong reasons to do it. We're not here to put people off. You need you need to encourage, inspire, and help and support people on the journey. But it's a journey that you have to decide to take, and it's really important that when you do it, you go into it eyes wide open. You don't step into the ring with someone like Tyson without training first. You've got to be prepared for it. And it is a battle, and they will make it very uncomfortable for you if you're not prepared. If you're prepared, it's going to be the most ultimate, enjoyable, amazing time of your life. This is the best time to be alive in the last 6,000 years, and this is the best place for it. Because this is where democracy, where people directly control the law under which they live using annulment by trial by jury, which might be for another time. We'll watch Will Keats' interview with Richard Vobes. Right? That is ultimately where it's at. To have that sovereignty as a nation, we have to have a nation of strong individuals. And the process we're going through now, and since Brexit and going forward for the next few years, is about us investing in each other and making each other stronger. Whether or not that's challenging the system or first working on themselves, you make yourselves stronger first, get ready. And if you can't get ready to take the opponent on directly, then, help the others who can, help them with the paperwork, pick up the kids from school, whatever it is you can do to help them out. Work as a unit, a collective. That's what they fear. They fear you getting together and sharing the knowledge and becoming a collective, a genuinely united kingdom. Right, rather than a corporate United Kingdom. A genuine people that are there. Once you get that collective going, and you can see it's happening now. These calls are happening and people getting together. So it's a very positive thing. But if we just gave templates and you just start writing templates without understanding at least some of what we've talked about today as the first call, then we're just getting you into trouble. And then people are going to be knocking on your door and you're going to be calling us going, the bailiffs are here, the police, what do we do?
What do I do? Yeah.
And that's really uncomfortable. But it's uncomfortable when you know what you're doing. Let's not pretend we're not heroes here. Your adrenaline goes, the anxiety kicks in. They're parts of the emotion of being a human being. But you start to control those triggers and emotions and indicators. They do not throw you around like a voodoo doll anymore. That's the difference. You still experience that stuff, but the experience is different. You're now in control of it because you've become sovereign. And that's why the sort of philosophy bit, or, just think of it as fight psychology or, psychological warfare, not necessarily philosophy, but it's the mentality that you go into that ring with that's going to make a difference to the outcome. That's really what we're trying to get across today. And if that's too shallow and it's not deep enough, then it's going to be difficult.
Then maybe people aren't ready. Maybe people aren't ready yet if they find it too shallow. That's the thing, because we're all evolving at different times. But also, can I just say here, there are a lot of people that have I don't know, not the knowledge, or they've done their homework with common law, sovereignty, etc., and they are offering packages to help people. They're saying for a small fee, we can do this for you, we can do that for you. What are your views on that? Because I do know a few people that have paid up front and have got into trouble.
Should we just go to Dean first and then to Suk?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. So I've got a big issue with people asking for money for freedom. So I'll just give you an example. Is that the example could be that for £100, you reach this level of freedom. But for £200, you can be that little bit more free. And for £300, you can be even more free than the first two, and so on and so forth. Now, I believe that freedom isn't for sale at all for any price. So those that are asking for money, just be mindful about what it is that you're doing. I'm not saying don't, I'm not saying do, I'm just saying be mindful. And my own opinion is freedom is not for sale for any price.
Sue.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. So there are a number of people charging for stuff out there, and there's a number of things. Firstly is you do not pay for anything up front. Okay, if people claim that they can get your loans back and your mortgages back, then you're much better off paying them a larger fee when they get you the result, rather than paying them up front. Okay, you've got to learn to identify a scam when you see one. Okay, nobody has successfully got mortgages back in a rinse-repeat process that they could be charging you for it. Even in the legal world, in America, there's something called Sarbanes-Oxley legislation, which means you can't sell something you can't deliver, right? And that's even in that level. So it's insanity. And absolutely what Dean said, to charge people in order to free them is perverse. Okay, and it creates a gate. It's like a gatekeeper type scenario where you're saying, well, if you can't meet that paywall, we won't set you free. Well, the people that need it most probably can't afford the money. So why are you charging for it? And if you've got all that knowledge, then you should be in a content place. You should be in an abundant place. So again, why are you charging people for it? There are so many red flags and indicators from basic material transactional level right the way to a consciousness and spiritual level that paying for that stuff is wrong. Now, if someone has helped you and you agree an energy exchange to donate some money to them, to help them that they keep going, that's different if you have an agreement. But people who are charging you up front for stuff like that, for me, that's an absolute no-no. It's a huge red flag. Okay, people asking you to sign up for memberships in order to join a club so that you can get all the freedom. You know, at the end of the day, you don't need that. You're part of a club already. That's the bit that people are missing. Once they understand that, like Pete was saying, and you start to build those natural communities together, you have to sign a bit of paper to be part of those communities. The energy and spirit is there. And then as the nation starts to get to that critical mass, that energy will come along. And then you'll see the transition's happening now, but it will happen more quickly.
I've just got to look to the comment here. Nelly on the Land says, people don't respect advice that's free. What would you say to that? I mean, I think a lot of people don't respect all sorts of things that are free.
But those people who don't respect the information because it's being paid for, because it's free, they haven't made the journey.
Right.
So for those people, they're not looking for love, they're looking for a prostitute. But then you need to go to the prostitute zone. You don't need to go to look for a wife in the wife zone. So, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were laughing at that. I thought
I just love the analogy.
I cut to you.
Putting it.
Oh, I love his analogies, and because he just talks so much bloody sense, don't you, Sook? You all do, guys. It's amazing.
That's for you to determine that, to be honest.
So we've got half an hour, just under 25 minutes or so left of the show. It's been fascinating to go down this pathway because, as we said earlier, we've got some more of these to do. But there is this journey. Then it seems that we've all got to take. How and somebody said, what's the how do we make that journey? How do we get on that footing so that we are then empowered to be able to not have to go to others and ask, you know, what do I do? And when the bailiffs turn up, or when this red demand comes with boxes all over that, I don't know why I'm looking at that camera. There we are. What do I do? How do we start that process?
Big question.
Big question. Any of our gurus out there? Yes, Sook.
Well, the first part of life is you must enjoy it. So if you're in a position at the moment where you're not enjoying your life, just start enjoying it first. Because you have to come from a place of positivity. Sovereignty is a positive experience. There shouldn't be an anxious journey. So just start reconnecting with yourself, with the things you enjoy doing. If you know, and then start to go on a journey of listening and watching certain videos, documentaries, and just educate yourself. There's an important difference between people who are nescient and people who are ignorant. People who are ignorant are aware of something and have chosen to ignore it. That's why ignorance is no defense in the court of law. Nescience is when you genuinely are clueless about something and you're unaware of it. Nescience causes fear because it's the unknown. So the first thing to do is remove the nescience. So obviously watching some of the interviews that Richard Vobes has done on the shows, looking at the other research that those individuals have done on their websites. As you start to read more, you'll get confident. At the moment, you got, you know, a guy in a cap, a guy in a hat, and a guy sat. Actually, I'm not sure. A dark warehouse in London. I don't want to mess with it. I'm giving you advice online. But look, why should you believe any of us? I've done a lot of reading and stuff in the background, and as has Pete, as has Dean. And our confidence hasn't come from talking to each other. It came from the reading we did. We then built further confidence by talking to each other and realizing all the different independent sources that we'd read were essentially coming to the same ultimate conclusions and the same strategies in the same direction. And it's through that journey that you have to do it. So it's not a shortcut, but it is enjoyable if you start off as an educational process. Don't worry about having the fight. First, just build the knowledge. Just understand the game. And then once you've understood the game, then decide what you want to do. It might just be you train other people in it and you don't take the fight on you at all. There will be a role for you depending on your individual strengths. Whatever your individual strengths are, that's what you got to look at. And then once you got the knowledge, you got to think, how can I use those strengths to leverage this knowledge and get it out there?
Yeah, that to me makes a lot of sense. Because I mean, I've been in a fortunate position, of course, running the channel, meeting so many interesting people, and each one's given me a different piece of the jigsaw. Sometimes you're looking at one piece that you've had an interview with and you think that's really interesting, and then somebody gives you another one and you go, that's really interesting too, but I can't see how they join because the person I've yet to meet has got the middle piece which joins the two together, or the three together. Yeah. So yeah, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But some days it's like everyone's got a slight different approach to it, and so that's where it's confusing. But I think this has been a really
I think it has, and I think also something that needs to be mentioned is fear, because I think so many of us are living in fear, especially what's gone on over the last few years. They put us in fear. And once you can remove the fear, I mean, the only thing to really be frightened of is fear itself, isn't it? Because why are we frightened? Are we frightened of dying? When you're frightened of dying, then you are going to be living in fear, and because we're all going to go at some stage. And I think it comes from a place of love. If you know, love to me is the opposite to fear. And I think when you're working from a place of love, unconditional love, really, this is all heart-based stuff, not just filling in a form and sending it off and hoping. It's got to come from the heart, and that cannot be taught. You know, you have to do the work. And I think if the guys on the panel can maybe give us, I know you already have kind of alluded to it, but if these people that are watching the show would say, well, where do I start? What would you say? Pete said meditation. I mean, what other things could you suggest for people to do, which they're not expecting on this show? They're expecting to be able to fill in a form and send it off and, you know, get out of paying council tax. What would you suggest, guys?
A lot of the time, my experience has been that people who are doing a lot of fear, bailiffs turn up and so on and so forth, and they always seem overwhelmingly confident. But if a lot of the times you're looking at a bailiff, there's a lot of fear that they're doing as well. They're afraid that they're not going to be able to get what they need to get done, and so they're in fear as well. So that creates a lot of conflict, a lot of emotional distress. So you have to be able to calm yourself. You have to be able to let go, and as quite rightly says, it becomes like a game of you're just enjoying it. You really are just like playing. You go out to play. Oh, what are you going to say? Because we've got this knowledge, I suppose, and we're empowered by it. We don't have fear. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to say because I don't know what they're going to say. I don't know how they're going to behave. I have to respond in that moment. But I'm confident enough in what I know not to worry about what that may or may not be, because I'll know what to say when the time comes. And because I have that, when the time comes, I know what to say. If you want to know where to start, meditation is a great place to start. But you've got to manage your emotions, right? You've got to get to a place where your button gets pushed, but instead of reacting, you're like, oh, hang on, what does that mean? And can I do something about it other than react? Do you see what I mean?
Here's a slightly odd take on all of this, being an odd man.
Can't wait to hear this.
Where I am, there used to be a pub that used to be a nightclub outside, and when the kids were small, this room was a bedroom. And sometimes you'd get couples coming out late at night, 3 a.m, having been to the nightclub, and they would argue. And one particular night, my ex-wife at the time, she just walked out because they were standing outside keeping it. She walked out to this raging row, and just, now I couldn't have done it being a bloke, but she could do it being a mother, and just said, look, do you mind? I've got my children up there. Could you just move along and do your argument? But by the very fact that she came in, it quelled that whole conversation that they had, and it calmed them down, and they did move on. And I just wondered, this is the sort of comedy aspect with me, is when you've got these people banging up the door, I wouldn't suggest inviting them in, but could you sort of come out there with a tray of tea and biscuits and say, look, okay, let's just sit down and have a chat about this humanely, instead of having an argument, and kind of doing the unexpected, because presumably these guys are expecting you to be very resistant, to be angry, or to break down and cry. But if you sort of come out and go, oh, I'm so pleased, I've got this packet of biscuits, I really wanted to share it, or this cake, come and have a sit, and you put it out in the front garden and you say, sit down. Is that stupid? I mean, is that stupid? It's like sending, my old toys. Is that a silly thing to do?
I think that's a great strategy, and I think you should film it when you do it, Richard.
Yeah, can't wait. Can I just say on that basis though, when they came to take my car the other day because I hadn't paid a parking request invoice, which I'd forgotten about, and when they turned out, I wasn't there. They left a little red letter and saying, we're going to come and take your belongings or your property to the value of £396, and I was horrified because I thought, what? I didn't even remember it. So that's when I spoke to you. I put it on our little group, and then I spoke to Suk, and he said, you choose your battles. So I phoned Mr. G. Waite, who lives in Kent, and I'm
glad it wasn't T Waite, as in Terry Waite.
Oh yeah.
So you might wait 5 years for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I've been interviewed him, by the way. Sorry.
Chuck it in. But Mr. Waite, he was very, let's say, assertive to start with in the conversation, and then I paid the money, and then as I was on the phone to him, and he said, "Oh, your money's just come through," and we started having a nice conversation because I came.
He would then. You
well,
paid
he would,
him, haven't you?
But yes, but prior to that, he was very I don't want to say aggressive, but he had his defence up. Yes. Because he was saying, well, it's nothing to do with me. I'm just doing my job. I'm the debt collector. You haven't paid. It's something to do with the court in Northampton, the office in Northampton. And I said, look, I genuinely don't know what this is for. And he said, it's a parking fine from like 2021, 3 or 4 years ago. And I couldn't remember it. So then I said, well, I dispute it because the machine didn't work. And he said, well, you need to take it up with the court. Don't go back to the council. And I said, well, how do I do that? And he started Googling for me and giving me phone numbers and being very nice, and which I thought was kind of strange. So because you can win these people over, okay, he had got the money, so he had won as such. But I then phoned him up afterwards, later, and I said, look, I'd really like to chat with you on my little channel because I think you've got a very interesting job. And I've been on the other side of I've had to ask a bailiff actually to remove a tenant from a property who'd been living in my flat for 12 months and hadn't paid rent, and then fiddled around with the electricity and everything. So it took me 12 months to get the bailiff or the debt collector to come along, and they did actually remove this tenant. So talking to Mr. Waite, I'm saying, I think you do have a purpose in certain situations. But the whole point, I have dragged on this conversation, the purpose of me saying this is, I think, like you're saying, either taking a bit of cake, give them, say a few jokes or whatever, or just have a conversation with them to see that they are human as well, and maybe win them over, because they don't know what they're doing half the time.
So I'm going to go to Sue
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
sec, but
yeah.
just before we do, we've got 15 minutes left, and
Yeah.
it would be nice to get some questions from
Yeah,
the
yeah,
audience,
yeah.
because we've been adding questions.
We
and-
have.
And I feel it's a bit unfair on the
Yes.
audience, although we've had a
We have a bit of a
fantastic
chit-chat,
conversation.
yeah.
But yes, Sue, if you can be brief, and then we'll take some questions. And audience, if you can put your questions now with the word question, don't make them too complex or expect
Simple,
lengthy
yeah.
answers. Sue.
Yeah, sure. Look, just really quickly, it's an important point. Not the vast majority of people, 99.99% of people, are really good people stuck in a corrupt system trying to make ends meet. And it's really important that we remember that when we're engaging with people. It's not them and us. It's lots of people stuck in a real crap situation. And
Yeah.
what we're trying to do is find the most efficient, peaceful way of unlocking it. Right. And so it's always going to start by putting the olive branch out and trying to talk to people. That is there. But don't, be prepared, and don't be disappointed and feel rejected if you get a complete narcissist on the other side of the conversation. Equally, don't be really surprised if you get someone that's human being, because it's a whole mishmash of people out there. And if you just treat everyone as though they're some sort of satanic enemy, that's going to become a cropper as well, to be honest with you. So, it is important that we remember that most people are good people stuck in a corrupt system, even if they're in uniform.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Well, we're coming to the close, but before we come to that close, we will manage to get some of your questions in. But I think it's been worth doing, getting that philosophy as a bit of a groundwork for us. So, Karen, what have we got?
Well, this one's going on about the vehicles. The certificate of ownership again. We've already answered that. So if this is going out as a recorded show, people can get those answers. Somebody keeps saying, how do we know how bad the family court is? I mean,
yes,
that's yes.
How bad is the family court, Sue?
Really bad.
About
And
3
by
years
family-
ago, I was involved with a child that was involved in it. I had that child in the back of my car, taking them from one place to another in protective. And when that child got passed to the mother, 20 minutes later, I got a phone call from someone that was with him, and the child had been taken off the mother at gunpoint.
Oh,
crikey!
Right, they were little children, and they smashed the windows through to get them. There is nothing family about those courts. There's nothing justice about them. I'll even go as far out as saying over the next 12 to 24 months, you will start to realise how involved the government are in human trafficking and how much of a part the family courts play in that.
Right. And Dean said right at the beginning, I think it was Dean, don't get to court to begin with.
yeah.
So
No.
if you can...
That was Pete.
Oh, that was
Oh.
Pete. Oh, yeah, beg your pardon. Sorry, Dean. Misappropriating.
Oh, yeah, because actually Dean has been to court to prove a situation.
So, right.
Another question, how do we get off the electoral roll?
Don't go on it in the first place.
Yeah, right.
Because we did discuss this beforehand,
Yeah.
didn't we, about where you live.
But if you're on it...
Yeah, if you're on it, you've got to be, what's your name? Figgly?
Figgly, yes.
Something or other, Figgly Dots.
Sorry, I didn't actually manage to sort of work out the spelling, so now I can't mispronounce it. My memory's a bit... I'll have to think of
another one.
Think of another name.
Is there a way of getting off it once you're on?
I'm sure there's
Well,
a process.
it's every so often, doesn't it?
Well, they ask you to, yeah, they do. That's to vote, isn't it? They send you a form which you can fill in how many people live in your house.
No, they
Yeah,
do
so
the,
if
do the
you want it-
census.
The census, yeah, isn't
yeah.
that the same way? That's the way. The census, yes, you just don't fill it in,
Correct.
which is illegal.
Don't fill in the
fill
form.
it in. Yes, I've moved.
Because presumably people move around, don't they? They don't stay like me in the same place for
No, they
30 or
move.
bloody
Or you
years.
could say, yeah, you could just not fill it in next time. What is Civil National Business Centre? I don't know where that one came from. Have we talked
corporation.
about that? Oh, it's a corporation.
It's a corporation.
All right, so
Thanks,
you must
Pete.
have mentioned that. Okay. What other quickly questions? Can I make a suggestion? No. Well, there is no suggestion.
Just-
Yeah.
Yeah, just questions in the last 10 minutes, really.
Yeah. Question: do we need to get our live birth born document and where from? Do we
I've
need to
got
get
an
that?
I've got an answer for that.
Oh, well done.
Okay.
Okay, so if you were in court and somebody had committed murder with a gun, do you think the evidence that they would show to the jury would be a certificate? Or do you think the evidence that they would show to the jury would be the gun itself?
It's a brilliant answer.
Yeah. I think it might be the gun. I mean, I'm just, guessing on this one.
Julia's just very kindly reminded you of your name, the lovely Julia, your Figglefob.
Oh, Figglefob, thank you very much. She should know, you see. She is my partner, after all.
What else? Question, what of loose... hang on, they're coming to me. Would a £500 logbook loan stop the removal of a car or van? Would a £500 logbook loan...
A logbook loan?
Yeah, a logbook loan. The logbook comes with the car, doesn't it?
What they're saying essentially is that the car you're no longer the owner of the car. So if someone comes to get it, because there's outstanding charge on the car, logbook loan against the logbook, that they can't take it. Yeah, I think that, I don't think that's a legal term, but that's how I've interpreted that. The others might have a slightly different.
On the here's a question. I'll just get my own question in here very quickly. On the form, on the V5 form, and there says change your correct your name or change your name if it's down wrong or whatever. Could you just make up a name? Could you sort of go, from now on I'm Figglyfog, and 25 Acacia Avenue in case you're passing, and would they just change that? Do you need to, Dean?
Yeah. Do not lie at all, ever, because that is a crime. But what you could do is you could make up a trust.
Right, but I mean, if you've got a nickname that you do go by, if people call me Vobesy, and I just go, I'm just going to make the van in the name Vobesy. Yeah. Could I not do that? And wouldn't be lying necessarily.
No, but Vobes is still your known name. So I've got a slightly different view on that. So if you use the Constitution and you stand under Article 61, you are completely and lawfully entitled, in fact, deplored by the realm, to peacefully and lawfully obstruct the Crown and its agents. It is quite peaceful and lawful to put any name you want on the V5C, and it is not fraudulent or criminal at all. You can put your pet's name down on if you like, even normally. The problem you'll have is if and when the car gets taken into a pound, at that point, the name of the V5C needs to match the name of the one getting it. So there are, and I've done it, right? I've done all that stuff, and I've played with that with the cars and stuff. Okay, you can do it. Now, that is the power of the Constitution. It's under Article 61, and it's important that people understand that. Once you stand under it, you are completely entitled to play games and troll the system and hack the system as much as you want, as long as you don't cause anyone else any loss, harm, or injury. Okay, so it's quite reasonable that you can do that. I do it all the time. I play silly buggers with them, with the V5C name on the documents and that all the time, and it's quite lawful, and it's quite reasonable, and it's quite honourable, because you're dealing with a corrupt system. And so it's quite reasonable to use make your own legal fiction up. Use your dead granny. Right? If they can create legal fictions, you can create them, troll them and play with it. But make sure you understand that you are lawfully entitled to do it, and that you understand that Article 61 says that when the government becomes tyrannical, it is the people's duty to stand up lawfully and peacefully and obstruct them at every opportunity.
And somebody on the vehicle conversation says you can put your vehicle in a business name and set it up as a limited company, so that could work. For a lot of people, probably.
Yep.
And some other questions. Somebody says we need to search for solutions rather than focus on problems. That's not a question, that's a statement.
Thank
you. That keeps coming up.
That's very nice.
Very, very good one. And somebody wants to know some good sources and resources. And then they've said David Edelman has a website with a lot of information, and David's joining us next week. But can you guys recommend any sources or resources? No.
Great. Okay.
I'm moving on.
It's a really open question, though, I suppose. It depends.
It is, yeah.
So the first thing I would say is the book Democracy Defined, and then the commonlawconstitution.com website, which we'll keep put together. That writes things down in Fisher-Price terms.
Yeah, there's also, I'd recommend a website called the Justinian Deception, which is Ron Stewart. That would be on my list.
Fabulous. We have about 5 minutes left. So let's just get cracking through the questions. Somebody said, finally, some lawful rebellion stuff.
So question here, has anyone known of Baron David Ward affidavit?
Ah, yes, this is a famous affidavit, isn't it?
Yes.
Is that the answer to that question?
That is, yes. Somebody knows of it, so...
I'm looking for the word question first. Should I... Okay, question. Should I send a notice to a judge in a court of protection case as I've corrected my status and standing?
Involving what?
Doesn't
Yeah,
say.
it's probably something, I don't know, yeah, it's a bit more detailed.
Yeah, I was going to say that's too...
Yeah, these going specific questions.
We
aren't
would
they,
need
really?
more information there, presumably.
Yes,
yeah.
so whoever, because they've gone up
But
the
give
screen.
us a bit more information next time.
Yes.
And maybe one of the panelists can, and none of this is legal advice, by the way. I suppose we should have said that at the
Did we
beginning.
not? I thought we did actually.
Did we?
Oh, you said it maybe in your advert
yeah, this
thing.
is all just entertainment, ladies,
Yes.
which is why I throw in the jokes. So if we all
This is
end up
entertainment.
in the dock, not that we would be in the dock.
No,
of course.
we won't. Sovereign Project.
Yes.
That's a good resource. I think so. Is that another Pete? Is that Pete? Somebody Pete Stone? Is that?
I think it
Sovereign,
is. Yeah.
Sovereign Project. 'Cause
There's
I
a
know-
lot.
The Sovereign Project.live.
Thank you, Dot. He's just sent out a little film actually, which is really, really good. It just came my way the other day, just a mini video of how to do things, and saying no and not complying. So yeah, go onto that website. What other questions? Question, you missed my query. I'm sorry. Can you trademark your name?
Yeah,
That's from
some
Guy
people do.
Fawkes. You can.
Yeah.
Is there benefit in that?
Yeah, some people do that. There's people that are using that effectively and sending bills back when they use them and stuff. Yeah, if you go, I can't know off the top of my head. There's a blog. It's WordPress Awaken GB. If you search for that, you should get it. It's got a picture of Neo from the Matrix on it.
Just say that again, because could you just say that again, because it was just breaking up as you said it.
Yeah, sure. There's someone's put a WordPress blog together. There's a really good resource pool, and it explains to you fully the limited company process, the trademark process, vulnerability persons, and all of that. And I'll just give you I'll send you the link, Richard, if you can put it in maybe the description or something.
Yeah, sure.
And that goes through all of these questions in detail, and they've actually done it. Right, so they've written these documents off the back of doing it and successfully protecting their assets, and I won't say who they are for obvious reasons, right? But the anonymous blog is there, and you can go and have a look at it, and that'll have the detail on it.
Okay. One last question.
Yep, I think we're just about
okay,
the time.
So if you change your name by depol, how does that affect your status as in fiction? Your stats as a fiction.
So do you have to change your name by depol, but if you do change it by depol, which presumably is in their system, you no longer are your birth certificate? Is that what that means?
Yeah. So you would be simply changing your bank accounts. That's all that is. You've still got an account with the government. They can still bill you. That's all that it is.
Right. So you're still in their system, effectively.
Yeah.
Yeah. And giving jurisdiction.
Yeah, for that fictional entity.
For that new, yeah. Because I guess at the end of the day, what we're talking about is a name. Is not a spiritual being with flesh and blood. It's just a concept.
Let me ask you this name. Let me ask you this question, Richard.
Yes, please do.
When you move your mouth and tongue and use phonetics,
yes,
how is that imprinting on a piece of paper with ink?
Well, very cleverly, I happen to have a pen just attached to my tongue. No, it doesn't. Sorry.
It's not. So it's just phonetics.
Yes.
So something that is made up on a piece of paper in ink is fiction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think slowly people are, I mean, people coming to this for the first time, that's a huge leap of faith, isn't it?
Yeah.
But once you've got that idea that you are not the name, that you are something separate from it.
That's massive.
That's the very much the first step. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and I don't want to go over because, these things we're trying to stay as professional as we can.
Good luck.
Yeah. Well, you've seen how crap the on-screen editing is. But can I just say a big thank you to our panelists for coming on and bearing with us and all the questions. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here and to have your knowledge and your thoughts on all of this. As we say, it's not legal advice. We only say that for YouTube and all these other people. And it's also been an absolute pleasure to have you, the audience, tuning in and bearing with the technical issues. Not that there've been actually too many technical issues.
No, not really, considering. No.
Just the presenter here is a bit
but his mate on the
and a big thank you to Karen for setting this up and organising.
Absolute pleasure, really enjoyed it. And next week, can I say who we've got?
Yeah, of course.
So we have got Andy Barlow next week. We've got David Edelman, whose name's been popped up a couple of times, and Mick Stott. And then we're going to be the following week and the following week. So we're doing 4 of these, aren't we? And these gents hopefully will join us on another panel if they're happy to come back. Are you happy to come back?
Sure. If people want to hear us, I'm sure we'll come back.
I think they want to hear you. I think you've been amazing. Yeah.
And just before we go, then, has it been of any use to you as panelists? Has it been interesting, or have you found this the most tedious 2 hours of your life? You can lie. You can lie.
They've gone.
Yeah, they've disappeared.
It's always good to clarify one's own thinking and to get the perspective of someone else who is sovereign. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. It's been very useful. And look, the biggest thing is now we're having the discussion. That's the most important thing. The knowledge is spreading through having the discussion and the discourse and the debate for people to challenge. Everyone challenge us what we're telling you. You know, we need to be challenged. You need to be challenged. That's how, you know, we knock the carbon out of the steel and make it strong. So, you know, we don't want yes men everywhere. That's the most dangerous thing we can do in this environment is be surrounded by people who just nod. We want people that challenge us. So when we go out there, the fight becomes easier.
Yeah.
So train hard, fight easy. So, no, it's been brilliant.
Thank you, Seth. And
so to add one, just for the last question, there was a question earlier on about getting people together. I believe this is a step to get people together.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sorry, yes, I was waiting for you to.
Yes.
Absolutely, it is definitely. And I was going to say something about that, but it's totally. Yes, okay. We were asked earlier. From Eli in Bristol, actually, from the Shine seminars, how can people contact us? And I think at the moment, we don't really want to be contacted. I don't think you guys do, because you would be inundated. And I don't think, Richard, you don't want people to sort of block up your email.
No, I'm actually not here.
Yeah, and I'm going as well. So I think wait till the end of March when we do our last one, and then we might be able to do something. I don't know, but the main thing is really it's not just about sending templates or letters or you know
quick fixes. I think we've learned.
It's not about that. So just tune in each week and then sort of grow with us in learning to be sovereign yourself, and if that makes sense. So we're not giving any email addresses out at this stage because it really there's no purpose, to be honest. Yeah.
So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for bearing with us. It's been a fantastic 2 hours. Thank you for watching. Thanks to the panel. Thanks to Karen. And thank you. Until next time. Take care.
Thanks to you, Richard, as well.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Oh, one very last question. Somebody said, when are you next speaking, or where are you next speaking?
That is a good question.
He doesn't know yet. Next week?
I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. Oh, by the way, if you're watching this on the Friday night, I have a very interesting guest coming on tomorrow, be out in the afternoon, a chap who is challenging... and you may have seen the videos, a chap who is challenging government on all sorts of aspects. He's an ex-policeman and he's on the run. He's being traced and tracked. I can't tell you more than that, and it'll be out tomorrow afternoon, assuming they haven't got to him. But that's it from us. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time, from Karen and I, and the